So you want to sue your doctor. Okay. In this video, I'm going to provide general information about things you want to think about before you file a lawsuit against let's say a doctor, a dentist, hospital, or any kind of medical professional. My name is Mehdi Cherkaoui. I'm a civil litigation attorney in Houston, Texas. I provide general civil litigation information to the masses. If you like my content, please subscribe, hit the like button, and let's get to it. Okay, but before we get started, I am not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. If you have a situation that requires legal advice, I suggest and recommend you seek a lawyer in your city or state. So to be able to sue a doctor, it's no easy feat, at least not in the state of Texas. In the state of Texas, there are rules and regulations that govern and control your ability to file a lawsuit against a doctor. Let's start with the biggest one. First, there is a cap on your damages. By damages, I mean pain and suffering, to make it easy. What does that mean? If you have an issue with a doctor, or let's say a doctor made a mistake and you suffered some type of disfigurement or some kind of damages as a result of the mistake of the medical provider, the most you can get in damages against this doctor or medical provider outside of your medical bills is $250,000. So let's give an example. Let's say you went for surgery and you went on the operating table of this doctor who committed a mistake. And this mistake caused you some chronic illness or chronic condition that is unfortunately going to last your entire life. And because of this mistake, you went to a second doctor and then a third doctor, and then you had perhaps another surgery to correct the mistake of the first doctor. Well, all these medical bills that you piled up as a result of the mistake of the first doctor, there's no cap. You can get whatever the surgery cost, whatever new medical bills cost. If you win against the first doctor, then you should be able to get those damages. However, your pain and suffering, your mental anguish, any kind of damages for the pain that you've incurred in the state of Texas are capped to $250,000. Some people think that that's very unfair. I certainly think that. I think it's almost criminal not to be able to punish a doctor who's been grossly negligent in the operation and caused you damages. But then again, it's the law, and that's what we have to abide by. That's why you're not going to find a lot of law firms that are willing to pursue a medical malpractice case against a medical provider. So think about the issue of the cap and whether it's worth it. This also comes in play when you're comparing the amount of money you have to pay an attorney in order to file this lawsuit. Now, if you can find an attorney that will take a case under contingency, which means the attorney will not charge you anything up front and take a percentage, usually it's a third or perhaps up to 40% if it gets to trial. If you take a percentage of the recovery, well then great. But if you cannot find an attorney that will take it under contingency and you have to pay the cost out of pocket, and that could be the cost of filing, the hourly rate for the attorney, the cost for the expert witness, which I will get to on the second point, and costs of other expenses, deposition fees, perhaps travel fees. If you're not willing or able to make those expenses up front, then that's something you want to think about before you file a lawsuit. Second point, in my opinion, this is a very important point. In the state of Texas, and it may be the same case for the entire 50 states, you must have an expert report produced or provided to the doctor, and this expert report has to come from a qualified expert. So in this event, you normally get another doctor. And this doctor, the expert, will have to give you a report, a written report, detailing how the first doctor got it wrong. Where did he commit a mistake? And how did he fall below the standards that are usually followed in the medical industry? In simpler terms, you have to find a doctor that'll say, your first doctor committed a mistake, here's what he did, here's why he should be held liable, and this usually doesn't happen in the medical community. Let's face it, doctors are usually held are usually regarded very highly by the public, and they have a lot of discretion when it comes to administering the kind of treatment that they think is best for you. However, there is an industry standard, right, that most doctors follow. For example, and I give you a very, perhaps extreme example, but most doctors will have to give a pregnancy test to a woman before they do any kind of x-rays, right? Because that if a woman is pregnant, the x-rays could cause a damage to the fetus and potentially lead to a miscarriage. So that's something that is routinely done for any doctor that wants to do an x-ray. If a doctor does an x-ray to a woman that's in the age of getting pregnant and he doesn't do a pregnancy test first, that could be an issue. This is just a simple example to give you on how a doctor can deviate from the typical standards in the medical community. So going back to the expert report, that is a very important element you must provide. I believe in the state of Texas, you must provide that report within 120 days. If you don't provide an expert report in a medical malpractice lawsuit, medical malpractice is basically filing a lawsuit against a doctor for negligence because of some problem that you suffered as a result of his treatment or surgery. If you don't give a medical report to the doctor or the doctor's lawyer from an expert detailing how this doctor made a mistake and how he should be held liable, your lawsuit not only gets dismissed automatically if you don't provide an expert report within 120 days, but the judge is likely to order you to pay the doctor's attorney's fees. And you don't want that. Certainly you don't want that. Those attorney's fees can add up, and now not only you've been damaged by someone allegedly, but now you have to pay the lawyer's fees. Expert reports are not cheap, and also experts are not going to come around very easily. Typically, you want to find an expert that's another practicing doctor in the same field that the first doctor practices in, and someone that's not a full-time expert, if you will. Not that there's anything wrong with a full-time expert, it's just that if you find a doctor that doesn't usually goes and testify every day in court, and that's really how he makes a living, and they're willing to come out and criticize the work of the first doctor, and most doctors don't want to do that, but if you find one, that's going to be a very good expert witness that's going to support your allegation against this doctor. So you have an expert report. You can deal with the cap in maximum damages when it comes to the $250,000 cap. Then you want to ask yourself, are you willing to wait until the lawsuit is over? Lawsuits take a long time to go to trial, and some of them settle after mediation, and it's just something that you want to think about in terms of cost and the length of time that it'll take to sue a doctor. Also think about whether you want a jury trial or a judge trial. So most of the time you want to choose a jury trial, and I'll have another video about the difference between jury trials and judge trials, the pros and cons, and why you should favor one over another depending on the kind of case you want to have. But in the event of a medical malpractice, you want to have jurors of your peers, right? You want to have people that can sympathize with you and sympathize with the pain that you have experienced. And usually with a judge, the judges have seen so many cases that sometimes they can become desensitized, and they may not grant you or order the kind of damages you're seeking to collect. But with a jury, they can probably see your pain, they can relate to having been to a doctor who was not very good and who was negligent, and may have caused their situation to be even worse. And that's pretty much it. I hope you learned from my video. If you like this kind of content, I ask you to hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.